Hello, my name is Richard Montgomerie and I'm from Group K. Today is June the 7th, 2016. We have produced this video to provide an important update in terms of where Neil Keenan and Group K are currently in terms of our mission and our next steps. I'm joined here by Neil Keenan along with Mark William and Dean Chambers, also of Group K. We will also be hearing from Mark Thomas, who will be giving an overview of his foundation, the Lords of Light. But first up is a message from Neil Keenan as he reflects upon the achievements and challenges of recent years as he prepares for the paradigm-shifting events that are soon to take place.
Hello everyone, my name is Neil Keenan. I'm the chairman of Group K. And to be honest, I have no idea where to begin this other than the beginning, which of course is the lawsuit. Approximately 7 years ago, I filed the trillion-dollar lawsuit against the cabal in the lower courts in Manhattan, New York. Ben Fulford at the time called it the case that would take down Western financial tyranny. David Wilcock wrote soon after, entitling it Financial Tyranny, and off it went, sailing into the midst of our societies, that someone finally took on the cabal and more. The war had begun. Society, or many members of it, finally opened their eyes. The case remained filed as long as possible, while I attempted to procure everything needed for jurisdiction. But when our judge retired right in the midst of matters, and President Obama's economic advisor's brother, who had been given a judgeship, was given one, and his first case to handle was the trillion-dollar lawsuit, and his job was to make it go away. I mean, it was impossible at that time to continue on with the case under such conditions. Jurisdiction was the first issue. And before they could get the beat on us, the lawsuit was withdrawn. Besides, in all fairness, Europe was the actual battleground, and America had finally opened its eyes at that point to a degree, which is what I wanted to accomplish, and we had done that. I did not listen to those naysayers saying they've never done anything to assist our planet. I cared only about the planet and our people. There are still those who claim the lawsuit was never done, whereas I say bullshit. The lawsuit was done but never completed. The lawsuit is for possible America, or as the judge said, only to be litigated in his courtroom, nowhere else. He forgot he has no authority in any other nation but America, and Europe has every right to litigate, seeing it all transpired right in their own backyard. I'll tell you one thing. What happened in Europe in their own backyard, the Da Vinci Code was tame compared to what we lived through. Things moved swiftly, though, from the lawsuit to global battles to our being instrumental in having Italian Prime Minister Berlusconi, Prime Minister Sarkozy, Queen Beatrice, the founder of the Bilderbergs, and many others either being incarcerated, defeated, stepping down from their global positions. We rocked heads, and that is for sure. We took it from political to financial, prevented 300,000 metric tons of gold from being shipped on the USS George Washington to Wall Street. What a sorry day that would have been had that happened, huh? We also prevented Obama from receiving 10,000 metric tons of gold from the ties. Yes, we did get to work, and hard work it was. You see, we're not bloggers. Many who make comments are. We're underground. We fight, and we win, and we answer to no one, not a soul. Soon after all this, we prevented the Clintons from using their Clinton Foundation from assassinating the vice president of Indonesia. Billions of dollars have been transferred into a known Indonesian bank account, political party. It was to be used to create chaos and secure the party of the cabal's choosing to rule over Indonesia. I wouldn't let that happen. I love Indonesia very much. The people are fantastic. The bunkers in the warehouses would never have been safe had that happened. We exposed the IRS as being a corporation, which you can see on our historical timelines archive, to creating and incorporating the idea of the Monaco Accords. Lord above, look at what that gave us. It led us to BRICS. Thank God for ideas and implementing them. Soon after, I screamed for the East to separate itself from the West financially. The West was raping the East, as well as the global accounts. The family in the East heard loud and clear, and soon had their own Asian infrastructure investment bank set up, taking the oomph out of the BIS, the IMF, and the World Bank. The Bretton Woods Agreement, which was the document signed by the East and West to use the global accounts worldwide, had been hijacked for a second time by the West, And all the geese could do was sit back and watch until our lawsuit was not just filed, but went on the attack. So basically, yes, the entire financial system was thought up by us much before it was ever implanted in a plan to protect the global collateral accounts and to veto out the fraudulent Bretton Woods agreements. The foundation of the West was shaking. You see, there are not that many involved in such high-level corruption. We are talking about the banking industry, the corporate government facilities and organizations, and to many others, but each felt the ping warning them their time was arriving soon. They felt it and they continue to feel it. The heat is on. On the other hand, we had so many firsts, and the one that still makes me laugh best is when we opened up the first gold box. Our adrenaline was still pumping through the roof after 10 hours of being on the road with the box in the car. We decided it was time to get this thing open. I was leaving the following evening, and Nelu was tired, as he was the driver, basically a race car maniac at the time, for most of the return. But we all got down and dirty, with Nelu driving hammers and screwdriving into the stainless steel box, only to learn later the box also had extreme value. It was stainless steel. But it popped open and gold was exposed. 51-kilogram UBS bars. We had to give everyone a look at them. Everybody deserved it. This is why we opened it on the spot. Otherwise, they'd wait a month, maybe 6 weeks, before they'd get another shot to see it. We soon used the bars as leverage for something much bigger, which is still waiting for us today, along with 30 other boxes. We expect to claim those someday soon. Speaking of adventure, I really ran the gambit, of course, on this one. My first trip into the bunker was incredible and mysterious. I will say very little other than it is 6 acres long, 5 levels high, and has every currency on the face of the planet inside it. Original documents of agreements we never heard of or knew of, which changed the course of the world, are inside it as well. Documents which would help the lawsuit. Yes, we will file a new lawsuit once again in the U.S., and it will be monumental. They will be dealing with one international incident after another with the original papers in this hand before they finally get to our matter, which will then appear insurmountable, and the world will be in revolution over what a few feeble but intelligent and well thought out Khazarian Zionist individuals started years ago. We will open up everything possible so it will be transparent what has happened to us and finally ours to see. Our hidden history will be right before our eyes and not something Rockefeller wrote up for us to brainwash us along with the television and the snooze. We might actually begin to think freely again, if not for the first time ever. Yes, the lawsuit, although seeming to have taken a back seat to the global accounts, it never lost my attention. Only you thought so, not me. I and only I know what I'm doing. It's a Keenan thing. You should know that. And I know what the vehicle is that will get me to where I'm going. This entire trip has had its ups and downs. But I think of it like this. There's never been a dull moment. Think about it. I've been shot at, poisoned 6 times or more, nearly blasted out of my side of the hotel when they set up Inchel and Joe's hotel room by turning the gas on while they were sleeping. Numerous fights in the streets, hallways, fights in the hallways here, even in the house, hit by a car with Italian plates, attacked by 2 Dutch citizens with knives in the streets, and so much more. I can only shake my head at the above, realizing I have more lives than a leprechaun. I really do. On the other side of the coin, I can only state that I have become fascinated with the spiritualism that's involved in everything we do. Man, I know, I've been ceremonied in Bali. I have been the only Caucasian in the bunkers. I have received gifts from the elders, and more are waiting for my return, should the stars line up properly. I have heard stories of my being in the 4th dimension, as well as this one, and found too many similarities to just neglect what they have said about this. This ride has been wild, and to be frank, if not for the people, I would have left it long ago. I cannot desert you, so I will not leave you. One way or another, I will get things done, and we will stand proud together. It is a rough road, as M2 says, but I have the strength to finish it up, even if on one leg. Remember, I had one leg. My leg was hurt, but we kept going, we kept moving, and I kept moving on it. This is our road to the finish line. This is our destiny, and we will cross it sooner rather than later. Speaking of M2, I must say M2 recently picked me up by my collar and told me to snap out of it and get back in the race, or get moving and build my retirement center. I could not believe I was hearing this. I had come this far and so little to go, and I was being told I might be ready for the pasture. Nothing left in the tank, sort of. My response was, hell no, I won't go. I'm here for the duration, people. And with the M1 status on the line, amongst other things, I must finish this up. So no matter what happens to me, life will continue on in a better state thanks to the amazing Group K. What a group of guys and girls, second to nothing or nobody. Amazing. I'm so proud to say I work with each and every one of them, love them like brothers and sisters, no matter what the results are. Fantastic individuals, each and every one of them. I salute them. I've heard that a very few jealous and envious people have been saying that others have financed everything I've done, and this is not anywhere near close. This is not true. I have personally financed nearly 100% of this venture with millions of my own dollars. No one came forth with big money. I spent the millions. They would not even know what $1 million looked like. When I left Indonesia last December 2015, I knew in advance something had changed as I walked out the hotel room doors. Whereas that morning I had a large amount of cash on my card, hours later, in early afternoon, most of it had been stripped from my account. When I returned home, I checked with the bank to find that it was even worse than I thought. And get this, while speaking with the banker, the perpetrator attempted to clean out what was left in my account. The bank, of course, shut it down. This thief has been caught. Secondly, another account had been stolen from at the same time in France. This man was also caught, who expounded to the court who he is and how he will decide what happens in the court, not the judge. He told the court he will repay me, but he represents many individuals who wish to shut me down, and the judge himself works for him and others are beneath him. I had the entire matter read to me. This also involved a lot of cash, which made it into my account only to be stolen almost immediately upon reaching it. The insurance of funds I still wait for, so it can bring me closer to the finish of this wild and adventurous journey. In closing here, I must state that M2 really picked me up and gave me strength with the necessary push to get me off my back and back in the race. I thank M2 for everything done for me. Now let me go further than this. I've also had money transferred into my account or attempted to be transferred into my account, and I'm talking high 6 digits, okay, into the 7 actually. And the excuses for my not getting them, ridiculous, just plain ridiculous. The Vanguard has been involved, which is the Bush Corporation, is the reason why I have not received it. So now let me enlighten everyone, stating that Group K is going to come back stronger than ever with some new additions to the team. Yes, we're going to have new additions. We'll be on the move shortly, and most of all want everyone to know we plan on getting it done. What has not been mentioned is Joe, Nelu, Janu, and so many more in Asia are the necessary ingredients to making this successful. They are amazing in their own right, second to none. Thank you, M2, for the push. It hurt. So now, I think I said enough. And God bless you all. Hang in there. We're going to get this done. It will be finished. Thank you all for being there with me. Neil Keenan, signing out. Bye-bye.
Hi there. My name is Mark William, and I come from Canada. I've been involved with Neil Keenan and Group K for the last year and a half. I met Neil Keenan online, and I met him through a situation where I was blasting Karen Hughes, and that's where we made our connection. And I started getting to know Neil Keenan online, and he realized some of my skills, was interested in talking further. My background, I'm been in the media communications business for 30 years. My title is Director of Photography. I'm a cinematographer, cameraman doing documentaries. I've been traveling to roughly about 70 countries throughout the 30 years doing historical films, cultural films, spiritual films, and a lot of current affair films. I have a background in understanding the global financial system and what has been going on, wamboozling the people of the world. So I brought that to the table when I met Neil Keenan and I started working with him. I was always impressed by Neil Keenan, just listening to him and realizing this man was taking on this huge job of trying to secure the global accounts. Now, most people don't understand the global accounts, and really only a few that have listened to Neil Keenan and through Benjamin Fulford or David Wilcox, who did Financial Tyranny. This is all the work that Neil Keenan has done. People have not realized that the whole financial system in the West is backed up with collateral, and that collateral has come from Asia, particularly to the China Dragon family, which was called the Kuomintang Organization, the nationalist Chinese of China. They have been backing the financial system or the Rothschilds banking system for just over 100 years. And most people don't understand that. And even people at the top end of the system don't understand where this collateral came from. When I followed Neil, I knew a bit about the collateral accounts and thus realized what he was doing and realized that he was connected to the Dragon family. That gave me a sense that he was doing the right thing and with the right people and being authorized by the right people to do this. There's been a lot of other groups that have come forward that online you would hear their names, which is OITC, OPT, Swiss Indo, the Red Dragon, the ambassador of the Red Dragon. Well, most of these groups, if you look at their documents that they put out, they're documents that have been actually used by many different groups over and over again. They're all counterfeit. We know who made these documents, and they quite often use the same accounts that come out of the Philippines. The whole area of Marcos and who's who, and they have these accounts. They all refer to an account. I think it is LSM-TVM666. Now, these accounts are being proven fraud, and many groups are still trying to utilize them. And over the course of the last year and a half that I've been involved with Neil Keenan and with the other members of Group K, we've exposed these groups over and over again and let people know that they're not real. Now, many people have come forward and said Neil Keenan is not real. And, they've made claims against him. He is not, and he's not working with the Dragon family. Or Neil Keenan is an ex-felon, or he's a drug pusher, or he's a CIA agent. None of this is true, and it can all be proven, and there's nothing there to sustain those claims. Probably the last of the false people claiming these accounts was the Red Dragon, the ambassador Red Dragon, who claims to be part of the Chinese Asian family, when actually he is a Westerner, European, representing some sort of agency from the West. That's pretty much come out too. So in the end, what has happened here, Neil Keenan, over the last year or two, especially over the last 6 or 8 months, has proven himself to be who he is. And it's not so much to the public, it's more to the people that are at the top of the system, the who's who of the system, those who are trying to bring things back in order in this world. They have come to Neil Keenan and appreciate what he is doing. And many of them, of course, are saying, we would like to be involved with you. Can you get us money? We need money for our projects or our nation. Can you get us money? Well, it's the same old, same old. They want. And no one for the past year and a half has come forward just financially to try to assist Neil in what he is doing. Now, Neil, over the course of the last 8 years, has spent in the millions on securing these collateral accounts. It started when the Asian Dragon family gave Neil Keenan a number of bonds worth $1.4 billion to cash in to put into PPP private programs for humanitarian projects. Now, those bonds were intercepted and stolen in Europe by the World Economic Forum through Dabasco, who was connected to Berlusconi, the ex-prime minister of Italy, that these bonds would be put into their accounts in their bank and thus use it for their reasons. Neil turned around and did a $1 trillion lawsuit against all these organizations, the Federal Reserve, the New York Federal Reserve, the central banks of Europe, the key people in the Illuminati system, all the way up to the Rothschilds. This, to the public, is not a, they don't understand how big this is and the repercussions of this lawsuit that Neil Keenan put out. Now, he put it into a court system in New York, which in the end has to be refiled in Switzerland, which is the proper jurisdiction. But filing this lawsuit in New York raised flags all around the world. Those who know, those at the top of the system, in the banking system, were taken back that this man, Neil Keenan, went after all the cabal system in the world. I said, how, this man, how could he do this? And he's still alive. This $1 trillion lawsuit that Neil Keenan put forward with the K Group and lawyers rattled the system. It's done a lot of good, even though Neil pulled it out to be able to refile it again with more evidence, much more evidence, at all levels to confirm that the US dollar or the euro is all fiat money. So moving forward, that raised the eyes and the ears of the who's who to realize that there was these collateral accounts. And behind those collateral accounts were the Dragon family. The lawsuit, Neil Keenan is representing the Dragon family. Neil Keenan is authorized by the Dragon family to rescue those bonds that were stolen from him. Now, he had a choice after they were stolen. The Dragon family came back to Neil and said, Neil, not to worry. We can cancel out those bonds and reissue some new ones in 60 days. So in 60 days, we'll give you some new bonds and you can put them through the system, thus to put them into PPP programs for humanitarian packages. Now, at that time, it was only through that year or so that he was working with the Dragon family that he understood more about the collateral accounts and what was backing the world system of currencies and finance. They offer, as I said, they offered him to reissue these bonds. But he said, if you take these bonds, you can't go after the collateral accounts. Either we or the system won't allow you to go after those collateral accounts. You're going to have to just walk away. So he was given a choice, either to take this, what would be $1 trillion. I mean, the bonds were worth $1.4 billion. But the interest over the last 60 years, 80-year bonds had collected interest that represent about $1 trillion. So that's where the $1 trillion lawsuit comes from. So he was given a choice to either take these bonds and he could then use them and they would be authorized by the Dragon family and then run through the system that he could actually cash them in. Well, he chose to go after the collateral accounts because he realized that if by going after the collateral accounts, he could release and bring them out into the open, go after them, and they would be in the quadrillions of dollars that thus could be used for humanity. When he did this $1 trillion lawsuit against the cabal, the Rothschilds, the Queen of England, the Queen of Netherlands, and a number of other of the name cabal, Neil was pulled in to a meeting in London. There was people like Evelyn Rothschild, heads of Barclays Bank and the other banks. They wanted him to go away. They did not want him to be involved in, and they were blown away, especially Evelyn Rothschild's, that a man, Neil Keenan, had such tenacity to go after them. No one had done this before. They gave him offers. It started off with $1 trillion. What do you want, Neil Keenan, to go away? If he took that offer, he'd have to walk away with a number of his friends and go disappear somewhere in the world and set up shop while we, the cabal, get rid of 2/3, 3/4 of the world population. This was quite a shock to Neil to realize that he was put into a position of playing God, in that he could take 25,000 people and disappear in the southern hemisphere while the cabal did what they wanted to do in depopulation. It was at that point where, again, he was given that offer. He said they were offering him pretty much anything he wanted to walk away. But if they took the offer, he couldn't go after the collateral accounts. So he realized that, what good is it for me to take this money, all this money more money than I could ever really need, but if I took that money, I would be walking away from humanity. I'd be walking away from many, many people, friends, neighbors, country folk, America, you name it. And that's not something that anyone would want to have placed on their heads. So he did not take any of the offers. And they still keep coming. The offers keep coming all the time for the last 7 years. They keep coming in the last week, the last 2 weeks. And this is May of 2016. For those listening here and are considering donations to Neil Keenan and Group K, one of the big questions that arises in this process of raising some money here to finish off securing the collateral accounts. A lot of people would say that, why would Neil Keenan need some money when he's involved in the collateral accounts or the Dragon family and all this quadrillions of dollars? Well, one of the deals with the Dragon family, with Neil going after the collateral accounts versus accepting, reissuing the bonds that were stolen from him, the Dragon family said, you can go after the collateral accounts, but we don't expect any funding from us. And the main part of the money that is needed is that over the course of the last 7 years, Neil has put out, over $5 million. It's upwards up to $7 or $8 million of his own money in lawsuits, and spending the time in Indonesia with other associates, bankers, lawyers, appointments in Europe. And Neil has always done everything with his own money. He's never asked for money before. He refused to ask for money. It's not in his character to ask for money, because he's always been self-sufficient, literally since he was 17 years old. He's never had a problem with money. Now, in this last stage, the work that he's been doing in the last year and a half, many things have come up in that many thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars have been stolen from him through bank accounts in Indonesia, bank accounts where he lives in Bulgaria. And this is, for the most part, the cabal trying to slow Neil Keenan down. For some reason, it seems that they just want to slow them down. Those people at the top, and I mean the Rothschilds and that, just want to slow them down, versus the people like the Clintons or the Bushes that are hiring people to try to kill them. But again, coming back to this, why does Neil Keenan need these funds? It is in this last steps that he's needing some funds, in that he's run out of funds. And about a half a year ago, he was having some problems. It's not the fact that he can't get money from the Americas. There's many people there in the Americas that would send him money, but most of these people in America or South America or Central America, people that he knows, business associates, have been told by the Obama, Bush, Clinton cabal, if you give any money to Neil Keenan, you and your family are in big trouble. Now, where he's at this point, he doesn't need a lot of money. It's at a point where he's got the complete authorization of the Dragon family. The Dragon family has seen that over the course of the last 7 years, the due diligence of Neil Keenan, that they trust him as being the sheriff for the collateral accounts, and especially in Asia or Southeast Asia. He has made ground in Indonesia over the course of the last 3 years, and it's been very difficult in Indonesia. The cultural country that it is, and even the Dragon family have never been able to really access the collateral accounts in Indonesia, and maybe in some ways didn't really care because they represented something that has been stopped. So Neil Keenan coming to Indonesia, starting about 4 or 5 years ago, and making the connections in Indonesia, the Dragons pointed him in the right direction, but he had to do the legwork. He had to find out who is who and who are the elders in Indonesia, what you would call the holders, the trustees of these accounts. They're not the depositors. The money that is in Indonesia, for the most part, is owned by the depositors, which is the Dragon family, which these accounts were set up anywhere from 1921 up to 1944, preparation to the Bretton Woods 1944 agreement, which was an agreement throughout the world with all the nations and all the royal families to register all their assets, all their collateral, all their riches, so they could be organized and be utilized the interest off the collateral to thus create humanitarian projects throughout the world. Now, when the 1944 Bretton Woods Agreement was set up, it was set up by the West, and it was set up by the West to actually rob the world. Only the West was going to get access to these collateral accounts. There was money set up to go to all the third world countries. The 1944 Bretton Woods Agreement was a coup by the West that only allowed power bloc countries and their affiliate nations, South Korea, Japan, Taiwan, Singapore, to get access to this money to rebuild their economies. And all the rest of what would be called the NAM, the non-aligning movement nations of the world, didn't get any access to these accounts. Actually, these accounts were slowly stolen from these other countries. So the Bretton Woods Agreement that was set up for the whole world really was only for the West, and denying upwards to 140 countries that didn't get access. This is important in respect to most people know now that are well researched or have looked at the internet, Kennedy-Sukarno connection, and setting up the Green Hilton Agreement, which would allow Kennedy to take some of this collateral gold and thus create a United States Treasury currency to break away from the Federal Reserve System that is controlling America and based out of the city of London. Sukarno, if you know his history, and just to reference to the people that are listening to this interview, in that if they want to find out a little bit more about the collateral accounts, the history of it, and also the timeline of the events and accomplishments of Neil Keenan and Group K, is just to Google Neil Keenan timeline of events, which will put you right on the whole document that will show you the history of the collateral accounts and all the way to Neil Keenan's timeline of events over the last 7 years. But in referring to the collateral accounts, in that document, you'll see the connection of and the importance of President Sukarno of Indonesia. He was elected in 1944 and as president of Indonesia, but at the same time he was elected M1 controller of the collateral accounts. He was elected by the West and authorized by the Dragon family, thus to rescue the collateral accounts and help distribute them in the world. This is 1 year after the Bretton Woods 1944 agreement, which then Asia, the Dragon families, and others realized that the West was not going to play fair. And this is why Sukarno was elected and elected M1 of the collateral accounts. And that he represented the non-aligning nations of the world, which became NAM, the non-aligning movement. That history you can read and realize that when he made that agreement, the Green-Hilton Agreement with Kennedy, 8 days later, John F. Kennedy was killed. President Sukarno was put into house arrest in Indonesia, and within a couple years, I think 1967, the CIA, the West, did a coup and brought in President Suharto. And through that, a few million people were killed in Indonesia in a coup over Indonesia. And all the supporters of Sukarno were killed and liquidated. And Suharto came into existence and worked side by side with the CIA. It was a CIA coup that devastated Indonesia and put Indonesia really not on the right track. You know, it was a way to extract resources out of Indonesia. And so that's a little piece of the history. But as I said, go to neilkeenan.com or Google Neil Keenan timeline of events, and you'll get a really good grasp of collateral accounts, the history, and as I said, the events, the accomplishments has happened over the last 7, 8 years now. Neil Keenan is truly a foot soldier on the ground doing the work. No one else has done this ever before. No one. Anyone else have done things illegally and just try to rob Indonesia. There's been a major problem for a number of years, and hopefully it's easing off because it's the Clinton, Bush, Soros groups have been trying to get into Indonesia. Even as a few years ago, Neil has broken a lot of intel in Southeast Asia, which you can read in the timeline of events. But in particular, the Clintons and the Soros were putting about $8 million into Indonesia to create a coup in Indonesia, take out the vice president and put in another vice president that thus would be in line with the CIA agenda. It was Neil Keenan that exposed this. So he's shown himself to the South Asian countries, and particularly to the Dragon family, that he has done more than most people have ever done to protect or guard the theft of the cabal of the West in different ways. As I said, Neil Keenan is a foot soldier. I had the opportunity to go down to Indonesia and work with Neil for about a month and a half I was there. So I got to see what was really going on and to watch the dealings that Neil Keenan had with the elders. It's taken 3 or 4 years for Neil to really connect with the right elders, the key elders of the collateral accounts. And still understand that there's many, many elders, holders of these collateral accounts in different forms in Indonesia. There's hundreds, if not thousands, of bunkers filled with riches and gold. But in that course, he met one of his main assistants, Nelu, who unfortunately was set up by someone giving him fake bonds, which then put Nelu in jail for about a year and a half. Neil needed Nelu to accomplish what he needed to do in Indonesia. It was Nelu that knew the different elders and who was who. It's Nelu that introduced Neil to Dr. Eddie Sino, who is the trustee of the Sukarno Trust. Now, there's a lot of people, and even people in Indonesia don't believe that there's these collateral accounts or gold bunkers, or that there's such thing as a Sukarno or trust. Well, that's really just the West making sure that Indonesia doesn't wake up to this. As a matter of fact, even the present president, as far as we know, as far as Neil knows, really doesn't know enough about the collateral accounts and that they do exist there in Indonesia. Thus, this president was probably educated in an Ivy League university from the West, and they've always probably told him, no, there's no such thing, and this and that. When actually there are, and I've actually seen the document, and I met Eddie Sino, the trustee of the Sukarno Trust, and I've seen all the detailed paperwork. And backtracking, Neil had to try to get Nelu out of jail so they could continue their work, which he did over a course of a year and a half. Pressure from Neil Keenan, lawyers, the public for that matter, put pressure on the courts to release Nelu because he was set up, falsely accused with these bonds. So once Nelu was out, they could go to work. So over the course of the middle of 2015 all the way through to 2016 now, they've made all the right connections. Eddie Sino has authorized Neil Keenan with the Sukarno Trust, which is now being put into action. These accounts are held in the UBS banking system, and they've been there for 30 or 40 years. The amounts are about $750 billion, and they're real. They've been authorized by UBS Bank to know that they are real and that they will make a deal and they will release these accounts. Now, the Sukarno Trust is separate from the collateral accounts. Now, the collateral accounts, again, are the collateral that the Dragon family, the Asian Dragon family, set up. These global accounts were meant to go out to the world, primarily to the non-aligning nations of the world, 144, at least 144 nations, if not more. Yes, some of these accounts are there for the West. Now, Indonesia is an amazing country for those who've never been there. It's a large country with a set of islands, with a population of 280 million people. And it's a Muslim country, the biggest Muslim country in the world. But Indonesia has an older culture. It had a Hindu culture, but it has an old sort of tribal, very sophisticated tribal culture. And of course, Indonesia's gone through a lot over the course of the last 60 years from the time Sukarno was put into house arrest and the Western coup on Indonesia. So the elders are not very trusting of the West and what they want. Are they just coming here to steal the accounts and stealing money? Are they going to just come and make promises and disappear with the money? So they've been very leery of people approaching them, because many other people like Tony Blairs of England or the Sorrells of the Rothschilds or the Clintons have come there. They've gotten money, they've stolen money, tricked the elders. So it's taken a long time in the course of the last year and a half for Neil to be trusted, to know that he's there for the right reasons. The elders of Indonesia are the holders of these accounts. They're not the owners or the depositors of these accounts. As I've said before, they're accounts that have been set up by the Dragon family. But over the course of the last 60 years, there's many elders in the country, and there's a generation that has gone by. And these elders, or younger elders, are saying, well, this is our money. This is not anybody else, it's our money. But it's not the case. And Neil has issued out warnings to all these elders that they better be careful in that to remember that these accounts are owned by the Dragon family and it's not there for your use. But at the same time, the elders, the holders in Indonesia, for the most part, have done their job of protecting these accounts. And I mean the most part. Most of these elders have done due diligence. There are many that haven't, and they've been stealing from it for their own reasons or just to feed their people, to give them enough food and rice to sustain themselves, because the economic Jakarta is a very rich and prosperous city. In some aspects, it's as modern in some places of like the West. But the countrysides are very poor, and they've been shunned and disconnected from the real economy of Indonesia. So going back, Neil has taken the time with his own money over the course of the last 8 years and spent upwards to $8 to $9 million of his own money. He is being robbed from his bank accounts of $300,000-$400,000, if not more, and denied bank accounts that he has in South America, Central America, and those are in the millions. He'll probably never see that money. It's probably already been taken. So he's come to this place in 2016 where he's had to look at reaching out to other people that would understand this collateral accounts, understand what he's actually doing. If you don't really grasp what he's doing and the importance of these collateral accounts, and that they're real, and that Neil Keenan is being authorized by the depositors. No one has had that authorization. No one. There's no one. None of these fake Opt, Swiss Indo, Red Dragon, OITC, none of them have been authorized by the Dragon family. Neil Keenan has. He doesn't put up those documents on the internet because people would copy them and use them for their own means. So he's been smart in not showing all his cards. It has left doubts with people and naysayers out there to say, oh, Neil Keenan is just a thief. He's there going in there and grabbing boxes and stealing money. Now, in the course of the last year, as I said, he's made ground in Indonesia and he's made contacts with the key people. The person in particular is what we would call the Prince. He has another Indonesian name, but we simplified it and called him the Prince because he is the gatekeeper of the main collateral account bunker depository, where the accounts come in. And this particular bunker is roughly 16 acres on 5 different levels, filled with gold and rubies and diamonds. I have not been in the bunker, but I know about them, where they are, and Neil has been into the bunkers. Him, Nelyu, and 1 or 2 other people have seen what's in these bunkers. It's mind-boggling to see and grasp what's in these bunkers. And they've been in there since 1944 at least, just stored away, not touched. All the documentation is there in relationship to the collateral. To know that this collateral is still being used for different nations. So money is coming in and out, and people are paying interest on these accounts. And there are euros and American dollars, and there are different denominations of Asian countries. Myself, through meeting the Prince with Neil on a number of occasions. And I wasn't involved with Neil at the time when he pulled the first box out of one of the bunkers that was given to him as a present of gold. And I think there was in the areas of about $15 million. I may be wrong, but that box of gold that was all tarnished, whatever other elements that were in that box tarnished that gold. But once you clean that gold off, they were real UBS bars, 1 kilogram bars of gold. That gold that was given to him he tried to leverage that gold for other bigger boxes. In that time, Neil slowly built the trust of the elders or the prince. The prince gave him this box, and behind that there were some other problems. Some other middleman got in the way at the next transaction that was taking place and screwed things up. There was a lot of confusion that went on between the elders and these middlemen, and blame started going around. So things became a little bit difficult. And I think the elder and the prince kind of pulled back a little bit. But the time that I was there in 2015, I met the prince with Neil Keenan, and they reestablished their connection and misunderstandings. And I saw for myself the prince and realizing that there were some problems and that they were now back in line to work together to try to open up these collateral accounts. The job of the prince is immense, and what he has to do, and the responsibility that he has for not only his community, but for many other people in Indonesia. He has a huge responsibility. And things progress. And again, I was there to realize and meet and sit down in the prince's home that that the agreements were set up, in that they now realized that Neil Keenan was the right man. They had done their due diligence, and as I said, Indonesia has an amazing old culture, a very mystic, spiritual culture. They're very evolved spiritually. They realize that Neil Keenan has been in their psyche. They realize that, in a way, it's hard to believe that they talked to Neil Keenan, and they've been aware that for 30 years that he would come. When Neil Keenan did meet them, they realized that this was the spirit, or this was the white man, this was the man from the West that they've been waiting for. In that, they still needed to check out Neil Keenan in the physical and what he's been doing in his accomplishments. Now, at this point, through the prince, Neil Keenan was introduced to the main elders above the prince. And this was the agreement that was set up, that the elders that oversee the prince said, we actually wanted the prince to give you the documents in the end of 2014 when you first met him. But it didn't take place. I don't know all the details. But 2015, actually, Neil Keenan was supposed to be given the documents that would allow him to honor him as what the Indonesian would say, the number one, which is M1, the monetary controller that would help bring these collateral accounts out to the world. But first and foremost, that the Indonesian people would be honored first, because they deserve to be honored first, because they've been protecting these accounts for over 70 years. They said, we honor and we will give you authorization. We have prepared the papers for you, and that the next time you come to Indonesia, we'll get them signed, in that you can move forward. And as long as you honor us and honor Indonesia, we will work together with you to bring these collateral accounts out to the world. That is the middle of 2015, August 2015, that this all took place. It was at that time that someone in Indonesia ripped Neil off his debit card. We now know who and where theft took place, but they ripped him off for roughly $250,000, which he ran out of money in that last thrust in Indonesia and had to return back to Bulgaria. When he returned back to Bulgaria, not once, that it happened a year before, but the second time, the accounts in his bank in Bulgaria disappeared, got ripped off. It's ultimately a Rothschild bank. The bank itself aren't the robbers or the account. It's the system that can come into the banking system and literally wipe out his accounts, which again, $200,000-300,000 were taken from his account. We're the spring of 2016. Neil is now being run down with all his funds. It's first time ever that he's never had funds, and other people in the world have been warned not to give Neil Keenan funds. So there were some thoughts of raising funds to the public in the spring of 2016. But really, Neil didn't want anything to do that. He didn't want to raise money, nickels and dimes, from the public that probably needed the money more for their self and their own survival or their families. He didn't feel that was right. In the last 6 months or a year, another gentleman came forward, which has been very interesting and why we are doing this interview. Mark Thomas has been trying to get hold of Neil Keenan for the last few years, and that he's offered his charity called the Lords of Light to be a vehicle to support Neil Keenan and to also set up operations in the United States, to have a vehicle and through a charity, all done legally, and to start to raise some funds. This is this new vehicle to allow people to become a part of what Neil Keenan is doing and support him. Those that understand what he's doing and understand how important these collateral accounts are. Realistically, the money that Neil needs to finish off these collateral accounts, somewhere in the range of $500,000 would be the buffer to get these things done, to do things in Indonesia, to do the due diligence in Europe, and accounts, and lawyers, and bankers. He probably will, in the near immediate future, meaning over the next month, will probably be able to raise this money that he needs. He's got a lot of rakes in the fire, and people have come forward, and we'll see what transpires. But setting up this support through a charity is really good for now, or continuing through the future, in that it allows a vehicle in the United States, an actual charity. So when Neil Keenan does open up the accounts, there's already a charity in place in the United States to actually put money through or allow people to bring forward their humanitarian projects and be presented to get the fund. So everyone, Neil and Group K, all feel that the offer that Mark Thomas has brought forward with his Lords of Light charity is a very good vehicle to allow people to get involved and allow a vehicle going forward that money can go through United States. The same thing is going to be set up in Indonesia, a foundation, a charity. You know, once these collateral accounts are open up and the agreements are signed, that the papers are there ready for Neil Keenan to sign by the elders that control the biggest depository bunker in Indonesia. They're waiting for Neil Keenan to come back to Indonesia. They've actually made contact with Neil saying, please come soon. We need to get moving on this. So we're that close in making these steps to move things forward. And because the world is changing so much, even in the course of the last year, to see that the Western system, the federal system, the central banking system, doesn't have the clout that they had before. Matter of fact, they're crumbling. They don't have the money. They don't have the fiat. The fiat system is all being exposed. They've run out of money. The mandate is done. The Eastern Asian system is on the rise. They've set up their new SWIFT account chips to move money through the system. So Asia, China, Russia, the Brazil, the BRIC nations are moving forward. And these collateral accounts will be set up based out of Asia, the East, because they'll be secure. Right now, there's nothing secure in the West. everything is in limbo. This year of 2016 should be an interesting year, and it's important that Neil Keenan is able to have the funds to move forward quickly, and every day that is lost could be detrimental to the world and particularly to the West. Every day that we keep going forward that there isn't real money out there could be very devastating for the Western world, and particularly the United States, in this transaction that is going on. So we hope people and those with some knowledge and background and have done the research into Neil Keenan, into the collateral accounts, it's important that you have that base and understanding of what Neil Keenan is doing to really understand and trust in moving forward and possibly presenting a donation that would be able to fund some of the operations or lawyers, accountants, bankers that have to be brought in to actually monetize from the bunkers that the elders are protecting. It's been interesting over the last year and a half being a part of Group K, and quite often talking with Neil. Many people have phoned him, and I mean top people, the who's who of the world, both what you would call the cabal and those who represent the good guys, to be on the line when the Dragon representative phones, and actually had a small chat with them. But as well, to be online and Neil getting a phone call and just saying, be quiet while I talk to this person. And I won't name names because I don't think it's appropriate in this, but those who are the cabal in the United States, the different members, the many different members. Well, each of them have phoned Neil Keenan. And of course, they're saying, join our team. You can join our team. And of course, Neil Keenan would say, why would I want to join your team, you scumbuckets? Why would I want to join your team? And he would just lay into them. Neil Keenan has no fear. No one intimidates him, and I mean no one, not all the way up to the top, to the Rothschilds. Those people at the top, and I mean at the very top, they actually appreciate Neil Keenan. They see and recognize the tenacity in him. They like that he stands up strong and won't take any bull from anyone else. So I've seen that, I've heard that conversation, and I've heard the lowlifes, the ones that we all know, like the Clintons or the Bushes, come forward, the lords in London. And on the good side, you have people in Russia, the top people, and I mean the top all the way up to Putin, have come forward wanting to assist Neil in different ways, through security, to make sure that he's well protected. So Neil Keenan has met and talked to all the top brass of the world scene. There's really no one that he hasn't talked to. So for the public, it's very hard to understand what Neil Keenan is doing, and anything about the collateral accounts is really off in left field for all matters. No, the collateral accounts have been hidden from humanity. Even the top people in banking systems didn't realize what the collateral accounts are, and that the money that funded the Western banking systems all came from Asia, through the Dragon families. And I mean the top people, accountants, bankers. It was only through Neil Keenan and through the different posts and intel that he's given forward in the last 3-4 years that they've been educated about the collateral accounts, that they actually do exist. And they do exist. And that's not hard to prove now. And the connections through Kennedy and Sukarno are very important to understand the depth of that connection. So truly, Neil Keenan is the right man for this job. He has the training. He looks at everything as a sport, a game to work through, win or lose from it. You learn through that in life's challenges. And he's done this the right way in that he was honored and authorized by the depositors. That's the key to this, the Dragon family connection. And thus, he spent the time and effort to make connection with the elders to get their trust in Indonesia. Really, the first person from the West that has been allowed into the bunkers legally without stealing. So the elders now realize that Neil Keenan is the man to do the job. He does what he says, and that they've now come forward, the main elders, and offered him that position to be the collateral accounts representative, authorized. So Neil has both the authorization of the family depositors, and he's about to sign the papers to be authorized by the holders of these accounts. That is being done legally. No one has done that before. Everyone else has tried to just steal and con Indonesian elders, and for the most part, the Asian dragon families for over 100 years. So I hope that allows people to understand a little bit about Neil Keenan, the global collateral accounts. For any further understandings or details, as I said, you can go to neilkeenan.com, and the fastest way to get to the history or the timelines is actually just Google Neil Keenan timeline events, and it will be the first document that will come up that you can get access to. So I appreciate your listening here, and I hope we hear from those that understand what we at Group K are doing and what Neil Keenan has pursued here on his own accord for the last 7 years with his own funds, not asking for a dime all the way up to this point. He's had to be humble and to realize that he needs other people there to help him out. And in that process of other people helping him out, these people, most people that will come forward, will either have humanitarian projects or they have expertise that Group K needs to continually to forward. So Group K will develop into an organization. It will be a foundation. None of this money of the collateral accounts will ever go to banks. It will all go through a foundation that can be the control base to make sure that this collateral accounts gets out to the right people and what they were originally meant for humanitarian reasons. They've been meant since 1944 through the Bretton Woods agreements, were meant to actually help the whole world financially and building infrastructure for their countries. And those non-aligning nations have been denied this access and being kept as termed third world nations, so the West could exploit them even more. Thanks for listening, and all the best when we talk to you next. Bye-bye.
I got introduced to the internet and social media and realized the newsworthiness of it. First thing I realized was Occupy Wall Street, that none of the major news media were covering any of this information. I found out the 3.4 million people in Egypt overturned their government, and there wasn't a peep about it on any of the news media. And going along, I also came across Dave Wilcock and heard the interview with Drake Bailey, whom I became friends with. It was during that period of time that I came across this man, Neil Keenan. And in the beginning, I had very, very few conversations, and it was directly through Drake that I got to meet this man and became very interested in what he was doing. I speak with him regularly, and I know one of the things he asked me to express to the listening audience was some background. So I'm going to share with you some of the things that have been prepared and then also add some of my own comments. So I'll start with background, Neil Keenan and the global collateral accounts. Who is Neil Keenan? He's an international businessman who has traveled the world and took on a variety of trade and reconstructuring projects that others would never dare to undertake. He's worked with presidents of developing countries from the Andes to Santo Domingo, and along the way made contacts with multitudes of people from all walks of life, including business, trade, investment, and banking. Who actually knew anything about the global collateral accounts before 8 years ago? Very few. And even if you asked Neil at the time, he would have said he didn't know anything about them or their importance. He got involved thinking it was just another business deal. However, Neil learned quite quickly how much bigger this deal is, as well as the importance and timely cause to help humanity itself. During the past 7 years, Neil has been rescuing the global collateral accounts for the Asian depositors, which is the dragon family, the golden dragon family. And also, during this time, he has been in contact with a full scope of important personalities. These are the movers, the makers, the shakers from business, banking, trade, heads of states, royal families, and different Asian elders. As a side note, I want you to know that I've had the privilege of listening in to some conversations and know this is all very, very true. They all know Neil Keenan is now, and of course, is a high-level financial game player, and yet dealing with the highest level in the cabal criminals. Keenan has endured and earned his way to become a world patriot for humanity. With his vast business experience combined with his nature as a sportsman and a fighter, Neil has always fought for the average person and the underdog for the greater good of humanity. His unique track record makes him ideally suited for his ongoing work with accessing and recovering the global collateral accounts for its depositors, which will in turn help to free humanity from the cabal debt enslavement system. The emergence of Neil Keenan. The events can be traced to the theft in 2009 by Vatican financial insider Daniel Del Basco of $144.5 billion in Federal Reserve notes, which were entrusted to Mr. Keenan by the Dragon family. The group of ancient wealthy clans in Asia who were the legitimate owners of vast amounts of gold in this off-ledger global accounts. Dragon family has been attempting for decades to utilize the accounts for their original intense purpose for humanitarian projects, and sought out Keenan's help because of his reputation and well-connected, tough-minded international business aptitude. The story of this theft and of Mr. Keenan's filing of a $1 trillion lawsuit against the elite figures and institutions, including the United Nations, the World Economic Forum, the World Bank, the Italian government, the Italian financial police, Silvio Berlusconi, and others. The 110-page lawsuit, first in New York federal court, can be reviewed at the $1 trillion lawsuit case. And you can view the $1 trillion lawsuit by going to neilkeenan.com and clicking on the History and Events timeline and view the November 2011 entry. In addition to this lawsuit, which he subsequently withdrew in order to refile in a more effective jurisdiction, Keenan also filed a cease and desist order on behalf of the Dragon family against a who's who of the cabal power structure, putting them on notice that they were defrauding the global accounts and they would be prosecuted for any further fraud. The cease and desist names were George Herbert Walker Bush, George W. Bush, Queen Elizabeth II, the United Nations, Ban Ki-moon, David Rockefeller, Hillary Clinton, and a host of other world figures and organizations who are in the inner circle of the cabal. The bonds which were stolen from Mr. Keenan were Federal Reserve notes given to the Dragon family in payment for the gold deposited in the accounts. Notes which the Federal Reserve continually blocked from utilization. Mr. Keenan's lawsuit represents the first formidable attempt to defend this theft. Mr. Keenan is in possession of key documents, such as the original of the Green Hilton Memorial Agreement between Kennedy and Soekarno, who was the original M1, and the Black Book, secret records of the accounts. Numerous other pieces of evidence can be provided. In addition to Mr. Keenan's participation, other key players may be brought to the table as part of any further interview process, including Indonesians involved in the guardianship of the assets, powerful Asian financial officials, and others. We propose immediate discussion to explore possibilities. My original mission was supported to be about the theft of the bonds entrusted to me, Neil is saying, but I came to see clearly that I had to be so much, much more. What appears to be and what is are two different things. They are using us. Our governments have turned out to be one big phony corporation. A massive worldwide scam perpetuated by the Rothschilds, Rockefeller, Morgan cartel and their various Zionist, Nazi, and Khazarian agents. The billion-dollar bond stole from me, he continues, although important, had to take a back seat. Humanity is calling for help. And I will fight this beast even if it is killing myself. No one deserves to be blinded in their life. No one deserves to be trained and treated like sheeple. Quote, Neil Keenan. By example, Neil has clearly demonstrated what one man can do when challenged to take on global dominion by those who are currently attempting to engineer and complete demise of mankind on the planet. Neil Keenan and Group K have provided groundbreaking changes and exposure of world events and conditions, and they are body and soul in affecting significant change on the planet. I'm going to include a kind of a snapshot summary of some of the events that has taken place. In 2008, Neil Keenan was authorized to represent the Dragon family assets given to him. 2009, Keenan personally accepts custodianship of the Federal Reserve notes. In 2011, Keenan issued a POA from Dr. Eddie Sino Sukarno. He had a landmark Monaco Accords meeting of 57 global ministers. Keenan files a $1 trillion lawsuit for the return of the stolen bonds. Keenan files liens against G7 central banks and 12 other banks. I want you to go back to the beginning when we're talking about the Monaco Accords, that he was a part of that and also became part of NAM, was the non-aligned nations, which was the foundation for what we have today, BRICS, and it's now called BRICS 3. Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. They fought the West. 2012, Keenan brings down a few at the top, prime ministers and one queen. 2013, Keenan reports that patriots stop a plot to detonate a nuclear warhead. Keenan goes to the bank capital and meets with cabal chieftains. 2014, he exposes the IRS as a foreign entity. He also proposed for the no-fly accords, international no-fly zones. He prevented a quadrillion-dollar deal between Sultan of Suli and the Vatican. He exposed the biggest gold heist in history taking place in South Korea. He prevented Japan from invading Indonesia in an attempt to steal gold. He exposed the Clinton Foundation plot to overthrow Indonesia. He's the first Westerner to enter a wealth repository bunker. He issued a cease and desist notice to the U.S. corporation, and he exposed the cabal for expanding its plan to take gold from Thailand. 2015, he announced the Book of Codes and Maklamat to suitable recipients. He reports intel on the German wings crash shutdown by U.S. NATO. He exposed World Economic Forum being held in Jakarta. Upon signing the documents, Mr. Neil Keenan will be known as Number 1 or M1 by the global collateral accounts. I became introduced to Neil through Drake Bailey. I became introduced to Drake through the David Wilcock interview. He spoke of the mass arrest in Washington and the collateral accounts. This is the first time it came to my attention. So I would probably say 3 or 4 years ago, indirectly, I have been sharing the posts that the K group puts out. But it's until recently, say about a month ago, I resigned my position and came over to Group K and working directly with them and with Neil.
What do you think of their operation since coming aboard?
I think that Neil has assembled a brilliant group of professionals from around the world. I've had an opportunity to work with, primarily listening to them assemble some of the offerings they would have in the posts that they put out for the Keenan group, and how hard and conscientious they were to put out the best accurate information that they possibly do. And then Neil would take it and usually add the meat to it at the end. And then, as you well know, Richard, you would assemble the whole thing and put it up.
In terms of their connections, what would you say of Group K's connections? Are they as good as they claim?
In the past, I would always ask for sources when I was over at CV, and I always get the same answer, that they wish to remain anonymous. They would never give me any sources, pretty much across the board. Upon coming over to K Group, they always have sources. As a matter of fact, Neil would be the first one to say, well, here, talk to this person, and call them up, and we'd have a conference call, and I would get to talk to Mr. So-and-so, and I would just be amazed at how many people were connected with Neil Keenan around the world.
So can you relay any detail of some of the conversations that you've been privy to with Neil, mentioning content but not names?
The thing that I'm most amazed at is how many different countries around the world talk directly with Neil. We're talking the highest level of government talking directly with him, and they pretty much all have the same goal. They want to give Neil whatever he wants in terms of finances to get him to open the collateral accounts, with the one hitch: they want all the proceeds. And Neil would absolutely refuse to do that. He's an American, wants to help the American people, wants to help folks in Indonesia. But back to the point, we get people that are in Asia, we get people that are in Europe, we get people that are in the Scandinavian countries, we get higher ups in the UK. I've heard conversations from South America, from at least 3 different countries. After a while, you realize the magnitude of what's really happening on a worldwide level, and the responsibility that Neil has shouldered and championed for the world.
Yeah, and the common denominator with all of these countries and people seems to be that all of their offers come with conditions, and Neil's adamant that this needs to be done independent of any nation or government, and that's why he's been battling on to independently raise the funds to get back to Indonesia, complete the paperwork, and open the accounts.
That's absolutely correct. And there's another aspect to this, and that's all the cabal connections around the world that are busy trying to buying him out. The top names in the cabal, and anybody that knows any of the homework, and I'm not going to mention any names, the top people call him directly and offer him staggering amounts of money to buy him out. Even as of recently, with the stir of exposing the New Republic, Old Republic recent post, Washington was going out of their mind trying to take him out of the scenario and just trying to buy him out. And I can't repeat how he beat them up. He is so focused. He's a man that has gone through so many things. I mean, he's been poisoned 6 times. He's attacked physically as well as spiritually. He's had mercenaries after him. He refuses their bribes and is set upon doing things with the highest integrity and ethics. I'm humbled to be a part of this whole project, and proud to be a part of the K team. The professionalism that is always being demonstrated is amazing. It's so positive. It's infectious. Now, Neil has had massive amount of funds stolen right out of his bank account, and that
it's out of numerous accounts, not to mention the accounts that have been frozen.
Absolutely correct. There were people that were trying to send him money, wire him money, and it was totally frozen in the banks through the SWIFT system. They just didn't want him to have the money because they knew what the implications were once that first domino falls. Heads roll. Nothing will be the same forever. He's determined. They just want him to walk away, and he's not going to.
Okay, so to give a brief introduction, my name is Mark Thomas. I'm the founder of Lords of Life Foundation. It's a vision that I had when I was 22 years old as a way to utilize some form of a vehicle. At the time, I didn't realize what it would be until later in life I realized that the non-organization is the vehicle I chose. It's a private foundation. It's a 501c3 that was applied for and approved by the IRS in September 2007. It's been a labor that I put together with my family. So my children, my nephews, my family members are involved. So it's kind of a family foundation, I would call it. It's a private foundation that we just decided in June of 2015 to bring this out to the public. The first time we actually did anything outside of a private setting. We owned a URL for a long time, www.lordsoflight.org, and that's been our URL since 2007, but we didn't actually have an active page beyond a placard until about November of last year. So as I started working on various things in my life, I came across a whole lot of very interesting things and spent probably 30 years looking at finance, looking at the creature from Jekyll Island, onto all my own research, trying to understand how money works, trying to understand where it comes from, who generates it, how is it controlled, all those kinds of things. Went through a whole series of education personally, and all these roads led me to some various points. One of the key things to me was I had heard an interview put on by David Wilcock interviewing Drake Bailey, and that was in 2012. And that was one very key point for me, because I was able to, for whatever reason, resonate with kind of that message. And I continued to follow that story, and I started to get more accustomed to a gentleman that I ran across from that circle. His name is Neil Keenan. And to me, Neil is quite an interesting fellow, and I continued to work very diligently to try to get to know Neil. And that was not simple to me, because I didn't know him. He didn't know me. He's busy. I was busy. I wanted to find a way to get in touch with him, and I worked very hard for about 3 years to try to get to him. So what I wanted to set the stage for here is kind of an idea that I presented to Mr. Keenan. And the idea is that to utilize my 501c3, or the foundation, as a vehicle to bring in resources to support his effort. And I think it's a very solid way to go about it. So what's unique about Lords of Light, so people understand, is I was approved for 7 areas for funding. Most nonprofits have 1, maybe 2, but we were approved for 7. So it kind of creates an umbrella type services that you can utilize to be able to do different resources placement. So one of the things that in my umbrella of services is called healing arts. So in my estimation, that's the category that I would utilize for this particular project. So as it turns out, after 3 years of listening and interacting with Mr. Keenan, I sent him a message. I tried to get in touch with him. I finally got a chance to, in February of 2016, I jumped into a further dialogue. I got a chance to get in touch with Mr. Keenan on the phone. We've talked for many hours now, daily, for quite some time, since February. And the more I got to know this gentleman, I discovered he's a real life person. He does exist. And many people have said in the past or on the internet that, is he actually out there? Is he a real person? Well, yes, he's a real person. And I've spent a lot of time with him on the phone, and I think that he has done a hell of a job in organizing together something that he's sacrificed more than most ever had or ever will have. And I think he's put his money where his mouth is. And what my thought is try to help him support the effort of opening these accounts and getting these things organized and put out there so that it can help everybody. The ultimate goal for me is to utilize my foundation as a vehicle to help people. That's the whole idea, is to be able to go in and do what needs to be done so people can have energy that's clean. They can have water that's clean. They can have education. They can have housing. They can have conservation, preservation. You can have healing without pharmaceutical medications. You can have all the necessary things, food for people to eat that's not filled with GMO, on and on. So the kindred spirit of the foundation's plan dovetails very nicely with what Neil has been working on, and the family that Neil is working with is very much focused on doing what's best for humanity, and what they want to see is everybody has the resources, everybody has things they need, not just a handful of people at the top in the West. So what I've put together in my estimation is my first project for Lords of Light Foundation was called Funding the Foot Soldiers. You can go to our website, you can read about the foot soldier concept, what it's all about. What a foot soldier is the person that's on the front line. You know, often those people are sacrificed. They're the first ones to go down in a war. Well, if anybody is a foot soldier in this situation, it's Neil Keenan. And he's the one that fits that mode. And for me, it's an honor to be able to help him. And I want to rally the people around Neil, the people around me, and the people around the world to support this effort. And what I can do is offer a tax-deductible donation. So if you contribute to Lords of Light, a lion's share of the money will go to Mr. Keenan, and he'll then have the resources he needs to finish his work. So I'm very comfortable with everything. I've done my due diligence. I am very comfortable with this gentleman and that what he's working on and the legitimacy of the whole thing. So anything I can do to help would be something I'm willing to do. And so the people in the United States that have tax that they're paying to the IRS, that's even if you have a corporation from another country that pays United States taxes, there are ways to do donations that will allow you to receive a tax benefit. If there's a unique case, we'll do the research and find out how to get that deduction to the person. Some cases, like Canadians and others, there's ways for the IRS to give you a deduction if you're from another country. It's a case-by-case basis. If you're a United States citizen, taxpayer from the United States, you're paying into the IRS, we certainly can give you a tax deduction without any concerns or consideration. So that's my presentation. If there's any questions or anything you need, my email address is available on the website. Again, the website is LORDS, Lords of OF, Light, LIGHT.org. And one of the things before I go, I want to clear something for everybody because people ask me a lot this question about the name. The name Lords of Light came from the book Keys of Enoch. And the Keys of Enoch, the beings who were allowed to travel between the universes, were known as Lords of Light. Also, according to Metatron, which is the recording angel or chancellor of heaven, told me that these Lords of Light are worthy to sit in the presence of the Father, or they choose periodically to leave his presence and go out and create other worlds of light, known as worlds of Elohim, a name for God used frequently in the Hebrew Bible. There's no way as this religious organization, it's not related to religion in any way. Those quotes I just read are quotes that I got as a definition of what Lords of Light is all about. Lords of Light Foundation's structure is published on our website insofar as the distribution of funds. So when $1 arrives via PayPal, if it comes in that way, PayPal will charge a fee, whatever that fee is they charge is deducted from the funds. And then whatever hits my accounts at Lords of Light, it will be split 75-25 on the first level of funding. We achieve a larger fund, then that scale, 75 cents, goes up to 80, then up to 85, then up to 90. And those funds, the 75 cents on up to 90 cents ultimately, those funds are dispersed to the foot soldier projects, or if you will, are donated out. The 25 cents on the dollar, the 20 cents on the dollar, the 15, and on up to 10 cents on the dollar remain with Lords of Light for operational expenses to set up our organization, since our organization was not set up with an endowment fund like many other nonprofits are. So to be clear, when somebody donates, the lion's share, 75 cents on the dollar, will go to the foot soldiers, in this case, Mr. Keenan being the foot soldier. So those funds are clear, and then I'll be open and transparent about the accounting of the resources, make it available to the parties. That's something you have to do as a good business anyway. So there's no worries on my side of the ledger. I'm set up to do everything. It's already published information. So I have no worries or concerns about the credibility and where the funds are going and all these other questions people generally have. So I'm very comfortable working in that space. So anybody has questions, again, they can reach me via email or on our website. You can click and send an email from the website. Neil is the foot soldier, Everybody that works for Group K has been foot soldiers within Neil's organization. So everybody is trying to get this job done, from NALU to all the parties involved, okay? And so basically, foot soldier concept is what came from my daughter's idea. Is when Martin Luther King, back in the day when he was doing his work, that's, there were foot soldiers that were the ones, like Rosa Parks and people sitting in the diners and people saying no. They're the frontline people so in our world of nonprofits, in the foundation world, there are two different types of people. One is a family who has all the resources in the world, and they're using the foundation structure to gain a tax benefit. So they transfer assets from their personal holdings or corporate holdings into a family foundation that's formed for them by an attorney and an accounting firm, etc. And those then go into that foundation structure. Now, that's better than them writing a big check to the IRS for them, because they still control the money in the foundation. They don't have to pay the IRS the taxes due. They get a tax deduction by forming a foundation. That's one type that's in the industry. The other type that's in the industry is people that just love helping people. That's the foot soldier. That's the person that's in it for the right reasons. That's the person that I, at Lords of Light, want to fund, because I want to go out and find these foot soldiers and give them the resources they need to finish their work, so that the world, quote, is a better place after they've done their work. It's difficult to raise money for a lot of people. They don't understand what fundraising's about. They're afraid to even ask for money. Most people have a hard time with the whole money thing. Well, I did it for 30 years in the private sector. I raised capital from investors for for-profit businesses doing research and development work. So I've had to learn the skill set and overcome the fears and all the things that are associated with it. So my role at Lords of Light is to put the fund together. Once I have the fund put together, then I go and find the foot soldiers. I'll hire teams of people to go and scour and look for foot soldiers. And it just so happens I found, quote, one of the biggest foot soldiers there is, Neil Keenan. And he's done more in the period of time he's been working on this than anybody in the alternative media sector, bar none. And he did it all with his own resources. I think it's time the rest of the world stands up, applauds this man, and supports effort he's put in, and get him across the goal. That's why I'm on the phone. Neil said this the other day: once we start this process, there's no reason to stop it. In other words, we achieve the goal for expenses, whatever that is.
Yes.
And then we just keep going.
This is Neil Keenan, or Group K needs that foundation like they need one in Indonesia.
Now, I can also do things through the United States, like when I first organized Lords of Light, I filed my documents, set it all up to be an international charity. So when you start in the United States, and then I can expand this globally. It's not difficult. In any way I can help him, I will. If he wants me to ramp up an international organization, from the very beginning, ultimately an international charity was the goal of the organization when it's complete.
So the template platform that you're at now, does it make it easier to do international setup?
Yes, it was designed that way from the beginning. One of the projects I presented, to give you an understanding, back when I was working in R&D, we invented an ocean wave-driven pumping system. So that technology, that tool, I owned about 12% of the equity in that business. Those organizations, because it's less than 30%, I could do deals with the foundation whereby I got a license from that organization to utilize that technology. So I went over to South Africa, and I met with Business Leadership South Africa, introduced by the large banks there. Literally, it's a Rothschild organization. I sat down with those people and presented CDOG as a technology whereby I'd have the license, they would put up the resources, and we would launch renewable energy in South Africa. Now, certainly they're not the right partner, and I don't want to do business with them. I'm just saying to you guys, they were the largest foundation in the country. And that's how originally I started working with the foundation, was to help people overseas achieve, because Africa needs water. You know what I'm saying? There's places all over the world that need food and water and all kinds of things. So my original idea was to work from the United States all over the world. Well, the foot soldier concept started. I was trying to begin to open the charity up. I wanted to put it out, put a website up, and start talking to the world from a private to more of an open to the public business. And when I did that, I had an idea in my head that I wanted to utilize for that, a picture I saw, and I contacted my oldest daughter, who's on the board of directors. She'll be a doctor in another year and 2 months. And I explained to her my concept was, funding for the people, by the people. I said, Jean, what do you think? She goes, Dad, that's terrible. And I'm like, okay, well, can you help me out? She said, yeah, what you're looking for, Dad, is funding the foot soldier. It's kind of like a Martin Luther King thing, Dad. Do you get it? So I appreciate the time. Let's rally together. Let's put this over the goal. Thank you very much for the time.